Hi, John here at Grape and Granary, and today I'm going to be doing a little demonstration on how to do an all-grain batch of beer from Brew in the bag. And Brew in the bag is really nothing more than mashing and almost sparging in one stock pot. And I'll show you how it's done. I'll show you some of the formula and some of the equipment. So let's start out a little bit with some of the equipment you need. First thing you're going to need for Brew in a bag is a good sized stock pot. I'm going to be using a 15-gallon size stock pot today because we need a stock pot that can hold the entire quantity of water, both mash water and rinse or sparge water. So in the case of the beer we're brewing today, and we're going to be brewing a Cascadian rye ale, kind of a recipe I've been developing over the last couple of months. So what I've got, 15-gallon stock pot, and then I've got a nice Brew in a bag. This bag happens to be large enough to fit down inside my 15-gallon size stock pot, and I can drape it all the way around the outside. And you're also going to need a few clamps to hold your Brew in the bag in place, like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of our mash water, which in this case is going to be 3 gallons, 3¼ gallons, because we've got about 10 pounds of grain in our recipe. And we're going to put all of our rinse water, which typically would use for a fly sparge, which is about 5¼ gallons, in our stock pot too. So we're going to actually start out with about 8¼ gallons of water in our stock pot. We're going to heat that water up to about 160 degrees, which is our typical strike temperature for any all-grain batch of beer. We're going to take our 10¼ pounds of grain in our recipe, and we're going to pour it into the water in our bag, and we're going to let it basically stew in there for about an hour to convert all the starch into sugar. When we pour our grain into our water at around 160 degrees, we should find the temperature drops right around 152, 153, which is Fahrenheit, where we want to be for this particular recipe. We can stir it in there. We can do all the normal things we would normally do if the bag wasn't there, okay? And then after an hour, we're going to go ahead and remove the bag. So all we're going to do is lift the bag up and let all the liquid drain right out. So it's kind of, again, like a mash and a sparge all in one container. When we pull this bag out, of course, some of the water is going to be withheld, is going to be absorbed by the grain. And so we'll lose a few gallons there, but we'll probably end up with about 6¼ 6½ gallons of liquid left in our stock pot. And then, of course, we'll go ahead and bring that to a boil and do our typical 90-minute boil like we normally would. A couple more things I want to say real quick. One, with a Brew in a bag type system, you really want to crush your grain pretty finely. So I've actually run this through our mill twice, because we're going for really good efficiency here if we can get it, since we're not actually doing a sparge. So I've run this grain through our mill twice, and that should help with the efficiency. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to measure out my 8¼ gallons of water. I'm going to put it in our stock pot, and we're going to begin heating that to our strike water temperature, which is going to be about 160 degrees. Okay, we've gone ahead and added our mash water to our stock pot, and you can see the water level there. I've got about 9 gallons of water in our stock pot. And you can see just above the liquid level there's a little scratch mark in the stock pot. That's my 10-gallon mark. And we've gone ahead and turned the flame on. And we're going to start to add heat. And we're going to bring this mash water up to 160 degrees. Okay, our mash water is up to temperature now. We're going to go ahead and drape our Brew in a bag inside of our stock pot. And I'm going to use these clamps to secure it. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add our grains. And we're going to go ahead and stir this just like we would any other mash. And you want to stir really well. You want to break up any clumps in the mash. And then we'll check our temperature. We want to make sure we're right around 154 degrees. I did add some gypsum to the water. That will help our mash pH. I added about 1 teaspoon per 5 gallons. So I've added about 1.5 teaspoons. And we're just going to go ahead and let it sit then for 60 minutes until all the starch is converted into sugar. I know some people might be concerned a bit about the pH of the mash, given that we've got so much mash water in our stock pot, but as you can see, I'm getting a reading of about 5.17 with our pH meter after adding 1.5 teaspoons of gypsum to the 8 or 9 gallons of mash water. Okay, we've done our 60-minute mash. We're ready to remove our grains from our stock pot. I've been stirring it with this mash paddle. It seems to get down to the very bottom, and the holes in the mash paddle help break up some of the clumps. So that works well. What we're going to do is we're going to lift this grain bag out of the water, and then we're going to let it drain. A couple things that you could think about using to help yourself to allow it to drain would be a nice size colander like this. Any restaurant supply house would have a good size colander, also one of this size. For now, just because of the kind of the setup we have here, we're going to lift the bag up, we're going to hang it up, and we're just going to let the liquid drain out of the bag. We're not going to rinse it, we're not going to sparge it, we're just going to lift it up and let it drain. All right, we're just going to go ahead and let the bag drain then down into our stock pot. See where our volume level is. And then we're going to go ahead and just bring it to a boil like any other batch. Okay, we're ready to wrap up our batch here. We went ahead and racked the beer from our boil kettle into our primary fermenter. We ended up with around 5 1/4 gallons in the fermenter, and I lost about a half a gallon to trub. So if you consider that I finished up with about 5 and almost 3/4 of a gallon at the end of my boil, I would calculate my efficiency to be about 70%, which isn't too bad considering the amount of work we didn't have to do. There was no sparging, the amount of time we saved. So Brew in a Bag, I think it's really worthwhile. I'd recommend it. And if you have any questions, please give us a call here at Grape and Granary. My name's John, and our website's www.grapeandgranary.com. Thanks for watching.